Look at this professional surrounded by accelerating data streams. They represent a new kind of worker hiding in plain sight, someone producing flawless, high-level documentation at a speed that seems almost impossible, all by quietly running generative models at their desk. But there is a distinct problem with this setup. The final reports arrive faster and cleaner, but the method used to create them is completely invisible to the wider business. The entire workflow exists only as a black box of private chat histories, unrecorded mental habits, and fleeting browser tabs. When your technical proficiency lives entirely inside your head, it creates a structural roadblock to your own career progression. You cannot submit an unwritten daily routine as evidence during a performance review, and you certainly cannot hand it over to new team members during a departmental expansion. Because of this lack of visibility, leadership misses the value of your process entirely. Without a documented system to look at, true technical mastery just looks like someone who happens to type quickly and stay out of trouble. The fix requires a shift in professional identity. You have to stop interacting with these platforms as a chaotic series of ad hoc web searches and start acting like an operational systems engineer who builds a deliberate, structural AI stack. If you want to turn those casual tool interactions into a pile of evidence that stands up to scrutiny, you must write down your exact digital setup into a repeatable operational playbook. The first layer of this playbook starts with an honest audit of your workspace. The technology market is saturated with specialized utilities, making it easy to drown in subscriptions. You need to cut through that operational noise and isolate only the 3 or 4 core platforms you rely on to complete your work every single week. Next, you have to write down exactly why you chose them over the alternatives. For example, you might dedicate a web retrieval model specifically for broad industry scans because it cites real-time sources, while keeping a completely separate analytical model reserved for dense document reviews because its layout tolerates massive information uploads. Once your core tools are set, the focus shifts to how you communicate with them. The second layer of your playbook abandons the habit of typing isolated, casual questions. Instead, you design repeatable prompts that function as explicit structural software briefs. A basic text input box must be expanded into distinct, modular components. First, you define the professional persona and corporate background data. Then, you lock in the remaining structural components, establishing strict processing boundaries and dictating the exact formatting rules for the final deliverable. Documenting these foundations and blueprints guarantees you never have to stare at an empty entry box, trying to recall the exact architectural rules required for a complex piece of analysis. Very few professional outputs are completed in a single step. To achieve real workflow efficiency, you have to link those individual, isolated tools into a continuous, multi-stage operational pipeline. Consider a financial operations analyst at a corporate firm in Sydney. He designed an explicit multi-tool sequence to accelerate his monthly portfolio risk reviews and formally mapped out exactly how his data moved from start to finish. Notice how a chaotic cluster of unedited client feedback flows into a primary aggregation tool, emerging as clean, thematic groupings. These transfer to a separate analytical model to filter key delivery gaps before moving into a writing platform to produce the final narrative brief. When this analyst department expanded rapidly, he handed this exact operational map to incoming staff. By physically charting the sequence of information transfer, he turned a private shortcut into a scalable piece of company infrastructure, bringing 3 new analysts to full capacity in days rather than months. The final and most critical layer of your playbook establishes your professional safety parameters. A well-designed system must explicitly define the exact boundaries where it is likely to fail. Generative models carry inherent vulnerabilities. They are highly susceptible to factual errors, structural omissions, and misinterpreting local contexts like regional regulatory frameworks or specific accounting variations. Watch this diagram closely. This heavy gateway represents your security protocol. Before any generated draft leaves your desk, you must stop the automated process entirely to execute a documented list of non-negotiable manual verification checks. By forcing your invisible safety checks sends a powerful psychological signal to leadership. It acts as definitive proof that you are actively managing a system under strict human supervision, rather than blindly outsourcing your intellect to an algorithm. When you stack these elements together, your deliberate tool choices, repeatable prompt architectures, mapped multi-step sequences, and strict verification boundaries, you build something permanent. You create a formalized corporate asset. By forcing your invisible efficiency into the light, you elevate your standing. You cease to be a standard employee completing ad hoc tasks, and instead become the undeniable operational architect of the business, actively multiplying your own professional market value.